Somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, a Category 5 hurricane is spinning at wind speeds over 157 miles per hour, throwing waves the height of a 4-story building. On the surface, a cruise ship the size of a small town is being lifted, rolled, and dropped by the sea. And 3 decks down, in a crew cabin no bigger than a walk-in closet, a housekeeping attendant is fast asleep. Not tossing, not gripping the sheets, just asleep, the way you'd sleep on a Tuesday night at home. How is that possible? How do the people living inside one of the most violent storms on Earth manage to sleep through it like nothing is happening at all? The instinct is to assume they can't. A hurricane sounds like chaos, and chaos should keep anyone awake. But the truth is stranger than that, and it starts long before the storm ever gets close enough to matter. Here's the first thing that changes how you think about this. It's not that crew have some superhuman ability to sleep through anything. It's that a modern cruise ship almost never gets caught flat-footed by a hurricane the way you'd imagine. Hurricanes are enormous, but they're also slow. The average forward speed of a hurricane crawling across open ocean is somewhere between 10 and 15 miles per hour. A modern cruise ship, cruising comfortably, moves at roughly 22 to 24 knots, close to 28 miles per hour. It can push past 30 knots if the captain needs to put real distance between the ship and the storm. In simple terms, the ship is faster than the hurricane. Fast enough that a storm system tracked a week in advance gets built into the route before becoming a real threat. That's the first layer of why crew can sleep so soundly. But it's only the first layer because a ship can still end up sailing through the edges of a storm system. So the real question is how the crew sleeps through it when they do. Even when a ship successfully dodges the eye of a hurricane, it doesn't dodge the ocean around it. Storms this size push swell hundreds of miles ahead of themselves. A ship can be 300 miles from the center of a Category 5 and still be riding waves stirred up by that same storm. So the real question isn't why crew sleep through the eye of a hurricane. It's why they sleep through the leftover chaos a storm leaves behind, even from a distance. And that comes down to something most passengers never think about, where the crew actually sleep. Passenger cabins are scattered across a dozen decks, many of them high up, close to balconies and outward-facing views. That's what people are paying for. Crew cabins are not built for a view. They're built for function. And function means one thing above everything else: stability. Crew accommodation is almost always positioned low in the ship and toward the center, near the middle of the vessel's length. That placement isn't random. It's physics. Picture a seesaw. Sit at the very end, and every small movement at the pivot point becomes a wild swing by the time it reaches you. Sit right at the center, and that same movement barely registers. A ship rolling in heavy seas works the same way. Cabins near the bow or stern, especially cabins high above the waterline, feel exaggerated motion. That's the ship's version of sitting at the end of the seesaw. Cabins low and central feel almost none of it. They're sitting at the pivot. So a crew member sleeping 3 decks down, dead center of a 100-feet vessel, is physically experiencing a fraction of the motion a passenger on deck 14 is feeling, at the exact same moment, in the exact same storm. But positioning alone doesn't explain everything. Even at the center of the ship, a storm still pushes and pulls at tens of thousands of tons of steel. So what's actually keeping that motion from turning into a violent sleep-ending roll? The answer is a piece of engineering most passengers walk right past without noticing. Beneath the waterline, extending out from the hull like a pair of underwater wings, sit the ship's stabilizer fins. They aren't decorative. They're active, computer-controlled. They adjust their angle constantly, sometimes dozens of times a minute, to counteract the roll of the ship before it even fully happens. The ship starts to tip one way. Sensors catch it instantly. The fins rotate and push back the other way. On most modern cruise ships, this system can cut rolling motion by as much as 90%. Think about what that number actually means. A roll that would have thrown loose items off a shelf becomes a roll so small it barely shifts a glass of water. There's a second layer working underneath that: ballast. Deep in the lowest part of the hull, cruise ships carry enormous ballast tanks, sometimes holding thousands of tons of water. Their whole job is to drag the ship's center of gravity down as low as possible. A lower center of gravity means the ship resists tipping in the first place. It's the same reason a tall, top-heavy object falls over easily, while a short, wide one barely wobbles. Naval architects even have a name for this balance: metacentric height. It's essentially a mathematical guarantee that the ship wants to return to upright far more than it wants to keep rolling. So before the stabilizer fins even do their job, the ship's basic shape is already fighting to stay level. Put those two systems together, and rough water that would feel violent on a small boat gets absorbed almost silently. But even the best engineering has limits. So what happens when a storm is bad enough to overwhelm the fins and the ballast at the same time? This is where sheer scale becomes its own kind of protection. A cruise ship isn't just big, it's heavy. Often 150,000 to 230,000 tons of steel, fuel, water, and cargo. That mass creates enormous inertia. Individual waves, even large ones, struggle to move something that heavy quickly. A small boat reacts to every swell almost instantly, snapping up and down with each one. A cruise ship responds slowly, smoothly, because moving that much mass just takes time, no matter how hard the ocean pushes. The same wave that would throw a fishing boat into the air barely registers as a gentle rise and fall on something the size of a floating stadium. Slow, heavy, predictable motion is far easier for a sleeping brain to tune out than the sharp, sudden jolts smaller vessels experience. There's also a human factor buried in all of this, one that has nothing to do with steel or hydraulics. Crew members aren't new to the sea. Many have spent years, sometimes decades, living aboard ships, and the body adapts. Mariners call it sea legs. It's a kind of physical recalibration where the inner ear and muscles simply stop registering normal ship motion as something worth reacting to. What would make a first-time passenger feel seasick barely registers to someone whose nervous system learned years ago that this movement is just what a floor does. Now, add exhausting, physically demanding shifts, often 10 to 12 hours on your feet. The result is a crew that isn't just tolerating the motion. They're too tired and too used to it for it to matter. So what happens in the rare case a storm actually gets close, closer than the routing models predicted? This is where regulation quietly takes over. Modern cruise ships are built to strict international stability standards set by the International Maritime Organization. Extreme wind, extreme roll, even partial flooding, all of it accounted for on paper before the ship ever leaves the shipyard. Watertight compartments, redundant stabilizer systems, hull designs tested against far worse conditions than any passenger will ever actually feel. But regulation on paper is one thing. What about when the numbers get tested at sea? Naval architects design cruise ships around a sobering figure. A vessel can roll to nearly 60 degrees, an angle that would send furniture sliding and passengers grabbing for railings before capsizing becomes a genuine risk. Most storms, even severe ones, produce rolls a fraction of that size. Ships this size are also engineered to ride out swells of 50 feet or more without any danger of sinking. That margin exists for one reason. The ocean occasionally ignores the forecast. Up on the bridge, officers and the ship's meteorologist are watching that margin in real time. Pressure readings, wind speed, wave height, all cross-checked against the ship's known limits. A few degrees of heading here, a little less speed there, adjusted long before any of it becomes visible to a passenger, let alone a sleeping crew member 3 decks below. So the next time you picture a cruise ship crew sleeping soundly while a hurricane spins somewhere out on the horizon, don't picture luck. Picture routing calculations made a week in advance. Cabins positioned at the calmest point on the ship. Fins fighting the sea 60 times a minute, ballast tanks holding the whole structure level, a body that stopped noticing the ocean's temper years ago, and a bridge crew quietly keeping the ship inside a margin it was built to survive with room to spare. The storm is real. The danger from where the crew is sleeping almost never is.